Welcome to the Reimagine podcast. Each week, give yourself 30 minutes and meet the people working hard to create the future of insurance today.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine podcast. And today we are going to be talking about claims. And claims may sound dry, but I've seen estimates that something like 70 to 80% of all costs of insurance carriers are driven by claims. And we've got some experts on here who will dispute or modify my statistics I have here. Laura, do you want to introduce our guests and set up the discussion?
Yeah, happy to do so. So we have two individuals joining us here today. We have Connor Atchison, CEO of Wise Docs, joining us from Canada. And we have a special friend co-hosting with us today. We're so excited to have Bobbie Shrivastav of Benekiva. She's co-founder and COO, and a familiar face and familiar voice. So Bobbie and Connor, today's discussion around claims, as Paul mentioned, may first sound like dry toast, but clearly you both have made success from this. So we want to learn more about each of you before we dive in. Connor, let's start with you. Do you mind just telling us a little bit, for the benefit of our listeners, who you are and what it is that your company does?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show today, and really appreciate the time. And I'll jump right in. So my background, I have over 12 years as a veteran in the military, and during that time, I really got involved in the claims and seeing some of the inefficiencies. I was also pulled into the process through short-term disability, long-term disability when I was discharged honorably. And that hit home for me. I seen that there was a real issue in how do we actually help our veterans, but anyone that actually has to go through a claims process, whether that's auto accident, whether that's, workers' compensation, disability. So I think it's been overlooked. It's dry. It's not sexy, as they say, but it's really, really important that we start really shifting how we look at the claim space, how we deliver value, and how we really give the claimants the best outcomes and care as possible.
That's great. Thanks so much. And Bobbie?
Thank you for having me on this show. And as everyone may know, I love claims. We have started in 2018. We built a company around beneficiary first focus on claims. So what we've done with Benekiva is we've created a low-code, no-code platform with all use cases of claims. And what we realized is, we were just talking about it earlier, is there's so much opportunity in claims because it is it is an expense on the balance sheet. And our entire premise is if you can have your foundation systems right when it comes to claims processing, you do have the opportunity, but not the guarantee, but the opportunity to turn that claimant into your customer. And it all depends on the experience that they get at the time of claim.
Paul, I believe you're tech.
Yeah, you're on mute.
2023 can't come soon enough.
Somebody has
better you than Bobbie or Connor,
exactly.
myself.
Yeah. So Connor, maybe we could just, dive a little deeper into the problem you're solving. So if I'm an insurance carrier, what problem are you solving for me, and what's unique about your solution?
Yeah, no, great question. So it's similar to Bobbie's experience. Like, we're all trying to tackle this problem from different angles, and it's such a vast ecosystem. So where we've taken the approach is looked at the unstructured data. So you see a medical record that typically goes directly to a claim, workers' compensation, disability, et cetera. But how do we get through that record faster to make a decision and to make sure we have the right information? So really, that's where we've really set up to try to tackle that problem, and we provide that solution to our clients so that instead of 8, 9, 10 hours of manually going through page by page of a PDF, you can get all of that information in 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So then it can actually enhance that value chain. It can go to the right clinician to review it. We can look at any indiscrepancies in that claim. We can start finding things that are often overlooked, errors and omissions, et cetera. So really, that's the value we bring, and we really try to help our clients get that time back so they can go to higher value tasks and improve the outcomes.
And Bobbie, maybe talk to us about, I know you've you're focused on a couple different product lines, and you're very embedded in the claims processes for a number of companies. If I'm the claims officer, chief claims officer at a company, what are you solving for me exactly?
So what we're solving for is, instead of your claims team going into 5, maybe 10, and in sometimes 16 systems to process a claim, what Benekiva does, it allows them to have one platform, and through integration allows them to be in one system to process the claim. So for example, like Connor's company would be an integration where if I need to request medical records, once I've received the medical records through the platform, we could run it through, for example, WiseDocs, to do that decisioning and give that decisioning back to the platform so that they're not going into multiple places. So they could be in one place to be truly efficient in their claims process.
So it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. We have the, AI side of things. We have the human intelligence side of things. You both come from, different backgrounds, but that you have a passion for this. And then there is a piece of it where I'm sure we're not even seeing it. So it's computer plus human equals, successful outcome. How has, in both of your cases, I'd be curious, how has the last, say, 2.5 years with the pandemic, how has it impacted your business and what you do and what you work to solve for? I'd imagine that maybe the number of claims could have risen in the last 2.5 years. So what does that look like, and what kind of impact has that had on you? I guess, Bobbie, let's start with you.
So we've seen a couple of scenarios. First, COVID was an accelerant because there is no longer a choice of being in your work environment to process a claim. And when you know from a claim perspective, there's so much legacy stack, as well as legacy processes such as fax and mail, that you no longer can rely on that to process claims. So we work with carriers that have had backlog because of just the human element of processing the claim, that we've been able to really streamline and even eliminate in some scenarios. The second piece I would say is this whole movement of great resignation that has come upon us. And what that has really created an opportunity is on onboarding, training, and retention of your staff. So you can no longer be in a legacy environment, because if it's going to take you upwards of 10 to 12 weeks to onboard a person, and then they go back and leave you, that's just time that's being invested that you don't get back. So how do you create an environment that is easily trainable, get them up to speed, and then also attract new talent? So new talent doesn't want to work in green screens and memorize F4 to do this, or F8 to do these things, or take screenshots of every single process. They want a modern technology that they want the same experience as the claimants do, anywhere, anytime, any device. And that's the piece that are indirectly what we've seen with this whole COVID era has really brought up. So it's not only how do we get the work done in a cloud-like environment, but also how do I retain talent and attract talent to work in claims?
Yeah, I think Bobbie nailed it really spot on. We've seen the same thing. The digitization, that shift, the whole global economy. You still had to do the same job. You still have claims to be processed, but no one's in the office. So how do we do it? And I think it was an accelerant for platforms like ours to say, well, we have to digitize. We have to actually have something that can be fully remote, but increase that efficiency, have that better margin, have that better outcome. And again, to echo on what Bobbie was alluding to on that workforce retention, I think there was a Gardner report recently released that from pre-pandemic levels to now, we can expect about a 20% higher turnover. So we're starting to see these trends that, it's harder to retain and attract. And, how do you build relationships when you've never met the person other than a Zoom call? Where pre-pandemic days, we're all in the office slogging away. You're building that relationship and that coffee or that water cooler talk. but yeah, it's a different environment, and I think that's where platforms like ours are really primed for an opportunity to catch that tailwind, especially when you have increased inflation, you have reduced revenues, everything is getting tighter, and FTEs are a tough thing to retain and keep that optimization. So I agree.
Yeah, Connor,
Bobbie.
Connor, I think AI has a lot of potential for addressing training issues. I've seen what it's done in other fields. Question for you though is, when is a claim just another claim, and at what point do you say, Paul, we've got an algorithm for processing Medicare supplement, Medicare supplement insurance claims, but we've got to build a whole different, set of algorithms for processing life insurance claims.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I would kind of retool it in the sense of how do we look at building algorithms and platforms to enhance the human as a tool. And I think if we get into this off the shelf where one size will fit all, like this algorithm will solve everything for oncology type claims. This algorithm is going to solve everything for diabetes or different comorbidities. It gets into kind of this rabbit hole. But when we start looking at it at a broader sense of how do we enable the human, how do we empower them to do more, have better insights, and make quicker, faster decisions, that's, I think, where we are right now at the state of AI. For it to be a sentient being, I think we're well away from that, and it's a bit far off. And I think that's a big confusion with the buzzwords. AI as a buzzword is it fixes all, it does everything, when in fact it doesn't. And it's how we build that to help that individual do a better job and actually really have a better job. It's taking away some of that mundane and manual work, and that's that empowerment, and it gives it back to the individual.
Yeah, and Bobbie, same question for you, maybe framed a little differently, and maybe reset my description of what you do. If I were to describe Benekiva, I would describe you almost as an organizational redesign service with some really good technology. You can probably reframe that a little better. Yeah. Looking at the types of claims you're supporting today, how different are those organizations product by product by product? If you think about what I think you use the words at a fundamental level, how different should those organizations look like based on the type of product line that the group is evaluating?
I think oftentimes when we go to an organization, they always feel like their claims process is so unique and so different to their company. And we hate to tell them that your processes are very similar. It's just how you're tackling it, the size of your organization may be different, may be the factor. What our premise is, Paul, is irregardless of the product type, can we, exactly with what Connor was saying, sharing, how do we empower the person to do all the things from a claims administration perspective in one platform? We oftentimes work with so many carriers that have the need to say, I'm building out this new product. I'm going to go ahead and invest in a new admin system, and I need a new claim system. But that creates such an impact to your organization, because now you may have to have a separate team that does those claims process. And honestly, Paul, what they're doing is it's just a lot of administrative work and very little decisioning. So if we can really have platforms that are connected together, you could really cross-train across teams, because the platform can allow you a workflow, a guided journey to say, if it's a disability claim, here's the process. If it's an annuity claim, here's a process. Here's a life claim, here's a process, versus having to worry about the different claim systems and then going through the other surround systems to process a claim. That's how we've tackled it. So our roadmap takes us to even P&C claims, Paul, in the future, because that's our whole model is we believe we can process claim irregardless of if it's life, PNC, commercial. Like we want to strive to be that one solution for a carrier.
And I think Bobbie nailed it and spoke really well about that. It's that interoperability, but it's also how do you find that solution that can kind of configure and fit all, and that's a hard problem to tackle. And I think as we start connecting all these pieces and you find that bedrock of what it is that you're solving for. So for us, it's the medical record at the core of everything. That's where everything kind of comes off of, similar to how Bobbie's trying to look at interoperability across every type of claim segment. If we look at where we can find that root cause, that's where we can start connecting all the dots. And that's where it's almost like a force multiplier where WiseDocs could tie in and as well as with Bobbie's platform, and we can find other systems. And before you know it, all of a sudden you've got this compounding effect. And I think that's where the insurance industry is going to move and lead.
Yeah.
It has to be efficient. And I think it's really like we tried to do this with the whole fire and HL7 and the EHR systems. And I think the insurance space is now just catching up and saying, hey, we got to do this too. So I'm really excited about it. It's a great spot to be, even though it is dry, as some people say. But yeah.
But to what Connor's saying is, it is really that partnership and that ecosystem that you can build. So we oftentimes tell customers, like we focus so much on the claims value chain, right? So if we tell warning signs to carriers, if your admin system says that they could do everything around the claims process, run, because the chances are they can't, because they can't solve every single process, because our focus from a company perspective is on claims platform. Connor's company is focused on how do I take unstructured data and make decisioning to empower. So when we start to connect these pieces, best of breed, it just becomes, like, from a carrier perspective, true efficiency. And this is where they can start to do true innovation on the product layer and not worry so much about the tech side, because the tech ecosystem is there to help support them as they create new products. They don't have to worry about admin, claim, docs, right? Everything is kind of working seamlessly, payments as well. So,
and I love that, like how you alluded to that, Bobbie, because it's like, everyone thinks they're doing it different, but it really is all very similar, right? And it's if we can just connect those dots and get more of these partnerships, all of a sudden it's like, wow, why is this so complicated? It doesn't have to be this complicated. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
So I'm curious, because to me it sounds like that would just make perfect sense, which is probably why it hasn't happened yet. But what do you think it's going to take to get there, right? What would it take to you just both talked about this illusion of perfection, or at least best in breed, and getting to that point. Is it more conversation? Is it more introduction? Is it more partnership? What needs to happen to help get us there?
Yeah,
I can go first, Connor.
Go for it.
I think honestly, it's going to take getting out of your own way and really allowing different voices to be heard that are diverse, right? So maybe you may be picking a partner that's helped you in your transformation journey, but allow other voices that are experts in those voices to be heard, because they may be designing a process in their lens and they've not evaluated other voices. That's what I would say is, like, don't listen to one voice as you're going through your claims transformation effort. Get multiple people that are domain level experts and let them share the voices, because I think that's what's going to help you drive that business case and allow you to really plug and play these partners together.
Yeah, and I think also to education, right? It's tough where you've had an industry that has always been kind of legacy in nature, a little bit behind the eight ball in the sense of, hey, we don't need to innovate right now. But if we can educate, create those partnerships, really start connecting the dots and showing people why and what that value creation is, that's where the change is gonna start. But I think it's gonna take a while, and I don't think that's an overnight, you flick a switch and all of a sudden, hey, we're there. I think it has to really, it's industry leaders, It's companies like ours, like Bobbie's, myself. It's our teams, it's our relationships with the carriers, it's that dialogue. And if we can start moving that, it's even on the podcast right now with you guys. If we're not discussing this and we're not educating, how do people know? And why would they want to change? Because right now, if it works, it works, and that's kind of been the old mentality. Don't fix it because it's not broken, but I think it is broken. So,
yeah. Oh, I agree. But I have a follow-up question to what Laura asked you, which is, fine, you sold me. I'm running claims at our insurance company. What new jobs should I start to fill, or what new skills should I start to impart in my organization to be ready for this transformation?
yeah, if I would look at it, it's shifting from up that value stream from a digital transformation. So now you have the platforms, and you can say, so what? Okay, now it's giving me value of better margins, less cost of goods sold, less FTEs. But I think we have to shift the economy, the global economy, on that digital aspect to, okay, where are the higher value tasks that we can empower our teams? So what kind of things can we start thinking that would improve that? Now frees us to do that. Where before, if, like an example, a mundane task of manually going through a medical record on one screen on a PDF that would take 6 hours to go through, say, a CAT assessment of 2,000 pages, now you can just put it into a system, and in 45 minutes, it's done for you. Well, in that time that you've just saved, what can we do to empower that individual to start looking at new innovative things within the organization, new processes, more integrations, more opportunities? And I think that's where we shift that workforce from just in a sense, and I'm not trying to say in a negative way, but like a drone where it's next repetitive, to I want to contribute, I want to think, I want to engage. And I think that's very powerful for innovative teams and innovative carriers.
So, Bobbie, should I hire
Yeah, I mean, I would.
a change management person? Should I hire maybe somebody who's very much knowledgeable about running IT projects?
I mean, going back to what Connor's saying is, if you, let's say from an efficiency perspective, we get rid of the administrative work and they're focused on high value work. This is where, from a carrier perspective, as you're innovating on new products, services, now you can start to really create what I call like center of excellence. So you may not need a claim person that's only does life. You can now say, I want to cross them to do annuity. I can cross them to do disability. I could cross them to do PNC, right? Like all of those things, like you can start to really go into a managed services model, which it doesn't matter about the work because the system is really guiding you through the process, but you become like so much more valuable to an organization if you could do more than just life claims. If you could maybe tackle servicing, maybe you're helping on the new business side. I think we have to just look at an individual as not like a claims professional, as more of they're an insurance professional, right? And I can really take that talent and grow them. The second piece that Connor alluded to, which I love, because when I worked at Pepsi, I loved seeing this where they would have these sessions on a every year when they did their annual operating plan. It wasn't just like, hey, senior leadership coming into the room and building the plan. They involved every single person in their organization. And then every single person, if they wanted the opportunity to really enhance those processes, can say, I want to be on this team. I want to be on this team. I was on the accounts receivable, like business analyst side when I first started in, and they recruited me to create an internship plan, which is an HR process, but it shows about like the type of experiences you can start to look when you look at it from an employee and a human perspective, not as a cog. They're just a claims cog, right? So when you have these efficiencies, I think the future of work really starts to differ. And that's where organizations can take the world is their oyster when it comes to what they could do with this human capital, which is really needed to drive the insurance industry forward.
And it's also culture. And I think to build on that, where Bobbie's alluding to as well, is now all of a sudden you have that collaboration, you have that diversification, you have that different perspective that you didn't have before. You've unlocked that potential. And what type of culture, that excellence, do you want to drive as an organization? Because if you can put that forward and you give people opportunities, those individuals will step up time and time and time again. And that's where you're getting some of the best outcomes as a business. And you really want to come to work empowered, and you have purpose. And I think that's the key to this. You're not just a drone. You're not a cog in the wheel. That's the future if we really want to build effective, efficient, really cutting edge and innovative carriers and insurance business and best practices.
So as you're both going out,
I was told this by... No, I was going to say, I was told by an early mentor in my early career days as a brand new leader, the one piece of advice I received, I think this is like close to 15, 20 years ago, is every person that comes to your company wants to do a great job, not just a good job. They want to add value. So looking at it from that lens really changes your perspective in terms of how you can really empower them.
So staying on the theme of employee empowerment and team member empowerment, Connor and Bobbie, curious for you as well. When you go out and say you're building your own teams, what kind of talent are you looking for? And it's less about, I need a certain skill set, but when you look at a human, what kind of, attributes are you looking for? Characteristics have you found through your teams that you currently have? People are going to shine. Have you found anything to be similar between your high shiners?
Yeah, it's, when I started the business, I really took it from military ethos, camaraderie, esprit de corps, and that culture. And that's at the forefront. And when we interview and the type of talent that we attract, they have that same value. It's the values you share. And I think that is such an important filter that you put in place, because not everyone's meant for the same culture and the same role in the same company, and that's fine. But when you really build like high performing teams, those values are critical. And it's about lifelong learning. It's about innovating and thinking, and always just really trying to be there for each other and pushing that bar. Because when one person steps up 10%, the next person steps up 15, and then there's 20. And if you're building a culture that way, that's anchored on those values, it's phenomenal on how cohesive that team is when it really gets tough. And that's what it comes down to. When push comes to shove and you fall on tough times, it's the person beside you. And if you don't build that from the outset, I think that's where organizations have a lot of leakage. I think there's a ton of turnover, and you just don't have that loyalty. And I don't blame individuals if it's not there. Right? I wouldn't want to work for an organization like that.
Yeah, I love it. It's once you've established a culture, it's very difficult to change. And both you and Bobbie mentioned you need to accept change, embrace change as a positive in the business. If I'm say the boss's boss, whoever's running the claims organization, here's a little different angle. Bobbie used the word center of excellence. Okay, today's age, we're focused on the next quarter's earnings. Maybe if you're owned by a different company, maybe you've got a luxury of a couple of years. But the days of focusing on 10 years down the track, they're very rare. At what point should an organization say, you know what, let's double down, let's make this truly a center of excellence versus, you know what, Laura, this is such a rat's nest. I'm going to outsource it to somebody who's really good and knows what they're doing. So I don't know, Bobbie, when you do your assessments, when do you tell people to say, yeah, you got something good, make it better versus, Paul, give it up. This is too much. Start from scratch.
I mean, oftentimes we are in landscapes where they have, outsourced, and even for those outsourced organizations, we end up being the claims platform. So it kind of, for us, we want to make their lives better. I think it really, it goes down to metrics, right? Like it goes down to KPIs. And honestly, Paul, like what we're seeing is there's going to be some areas where from just a talent perspective, you have to look at that, right? There's just, you may not have an option, right? But in some scenarios where I believe if it's your core, you want to have good insights and you want to control that process. And to me, like when it comes to whether you're deciding to offshore because of talent purposes or just a cost reduction purposes, or whether you can internally do this, I go back to the experience and let the experience guide because your experience is your brand. So how do you navigate that is your choice in terms of the KPIs and what's costing to do business. But I think you can't give that up, right? Like the minute you outsource, if you don't have an experience level expectation or metric, you're going down a very bad rabbit hole of just outsourcing. I mean, it makes sense to some scenarios where you may be outsourcing like if you're still on legacy stack, right? And there's going to be some things that's going to take time. Some of these organizations can help alleviate that, but you have to be in a balance, right? And to me, experience matters, and those are things that should you offshore or should you just create an excellence in your team to do that?
Yeah, and I would I'd follow on that. KPIs and OKRs are critical. I think if you do not have the end state in mind, you will spin, and that's where you really lose a lot of the momentum. And it's the momentum, and when you have that, it's doubling down on that momentum. You know what's working. You've hit your key results. Your objectives are clear. The team rallies behind that. I can't remember. Someone told me at every meeting with your team, you should outline your objectives, and it takes about 8 times before someone actually remembers it. So if you're not always enforcing that and showing that vision, but also the end state and intent, how do you know where to course correct? How do you know if those are the right objectives, the right key results, the right indicators? So absolutely, I think it's so critical setting the bar ahead of time. And that's the excellence that propels the organization and the team. And it lets you know where to shift as well, theoretically.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna flip and shift to my favorite question of every episode. And I'm going to use the word momentum to help us get there. So clearly, both you and Bobbie making tremendous motions and moves in this space. I think we've discovered that it is, in fact, not dry at all, and it is quite exciting. So, Connor, you talked a little bit about it in your intro, but what is your why? Why do you get up every day and do the work that you do?
I absolutely love that question. And I think that is the most fundamental thing, that you have to have that purpose, right? Because that why is your purpose. And why I do it, it's the personal experience, and it's seeing the impact that it has on people's lives. If you can give 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 year back to that claimant, if you can help that carrier, help them, everyone wins. So if I can get up every day and say, I'm just moving that needle incrementally, just a little bit, and over time, I'm getting more and more gains to help empower the claimant, help empower the entire ecosystem, from the provider, the payer. Everyone wins. You're getting better value care, and you're affecting people's lives in a positive way. So that's my why, and both from a personal and a professional level.
That's great. And Bobbie, you said something, I made sure to write it down. You said your experience is your brand. And I think that that's really important because people remember experiences. Sometimes maybe the negative a little bit better than the positive, which is too bad. But I know that everyone is receiving very positive experiences with you, Bobbie. What is your why? What gets you up in the morning every single day and motivates you to do the work that you're doing?
Honestly, like in the early phases of Benekiva, it's the claims problem is it's truly solving a real problem in the industry. That's what motivated me. I mean, prior to Benekiva, and how we actually even came to Benekiva was my early startup, right? My first startup, and allowed me to, put the mission and vision around Benekiva and what we've jointly created as, the three of us, like the three founders, is what excited me. That's shifted, right? Because as you grow and scale, you've got your teams to really manage that. What I've seen in our industry, and what I've seen as, Benekiva is not my first company, right? Is this whole focus around showing up, Laura, and showing up to create that positive change in the startup community, in the insurance community, in the insurtech community. And I think as a mother of a daughter, I want to show up to my daughter to say, I'm in tech. I'm a founder of a tech company. And if I can do it, there is no excuses. It may be tough to get somebody to call you back. Initial days, I used to leverage Brent a lot too. And Sylvan to say, hey, this person's not reaching out to me and help me, right? But now as you build your brand and build your expertise, how do you pay that forward, right? So it's turned into like a really big purpose. And there's a few of us founders that really want to figure out how do we really change the industry to be more balanced, more equitable, more diverse, and it's more voices and showing up, right? And that's what keeps me, moving forward within Benekiva.
Oh, that's great. Well, listen, thanks so much, Connor, Bobbie, for your time. Laura, it was a great discussion as usual. We'll put links to both your companies and LinkedIn profiles so people can connect with you there. But thanks for your time, and join us again next week for another episode of the Reimagine Podcast.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed
Thanks, Paul.
the show,
Thanks, Laura.
please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information about this company and other great startups at imagine.nfg.com.